Welcome to MSP Unplugged, episode number 19, Anti-Spoofing Email. I'm your host, Jeff Hallish. This is our live show where we discuss different ways to run your IT business, whether it's managed services, consulting, break fix, or anything in between. I would want you to go check out Instant House Call, remote support that is easy to use. You get free auto PC repair to track down and kill unwanted viruses, and free sub accounts to let your customers control their own PCs from home, which is a good thing nowadays. Special discount for listening to MSP Unplugged. You get half price for the first 3 months or 2 additional months free on a yearly subscription. To claim your discount, go to instanthousecall.com, sign up for your free 15-day trial, then email Corey at instanthousecall.com and tell him you're an MSP Unplugged listener. Let me introduce the co-hosts. We have Paco LeBron from Project X. Paco, how you doing?
Better than I deserve.
Very good. And we also have a Rob Bowker from DeMartian. Rob, how you doing?
Hey, good. Jeff, how's it going?
Did I say that right?
It's Boker, actually.
All right.
It is Boker. But you got the DeMartian right.
There you go. All right. And we also have Mike Wise from Clockwork Networks. Mike, how you doing?
Good. Hey, folks. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you. All right. Let's go ahead and share a tip or story that we could learn from. Paco, kick it off to you.
This one I'm actually really excited about. It's actually a feature release from a software that I use. So I'm a very big JumpCloud user. For those that don't know what JumpCloud is, it's basically kind of like an identity management type software similar to Active Directory for Microsoft, but it's cross-platform. So it installs on Windows, Mac, Linux, works really, really well. Well, they actually just this past Monday, I've been having a real big problem and pain with managing my Mac systems. And because just Apple makes it so much fun to try and manage these systems. So I actually was on the search for another management system, and there were quite a few that people have thrown out there. And so JumpCloud actually just released their MDM capabilities this past Monday. So what's cool about that is that JumpCloud not only has a tiered approach, which I think the first 10 users are free and then 11 on is a charge, but the charge is per user, not per endpoint. So with a lot of these other systems and RMM systems that manage Mac are usually by endpoint. So I'm super excited about it because I'm already invested in the JumpCloud platform. So this actually just came out Monday. I'll include the 2 links in the show notes and in the live, but I basically bring it up because for those that are looking at managing all their endpoints, this may be a cheaper solution because if you have X amount of devices per one user, you know, a desktop, a laptop, etc., this could probably help them cut costs as well. So JumpCloud, MDM, pretty excited. That's my tip/story for this week.
And Paco, the only question I have for you is, what does MDM stand for?
I'm glad you mentioned that. So it has many different, acronyms for MDM, but in this specific one, it's mobile device management, which is what Apple calls how to manage all of their devices.
Very good. All right. So you heard it here first. Apple mobile device management. All right. So since that's probably still the number one smartphone out there, I would imagine, I think nowadays. All right, and let's go ahead and go to Rob. Do you have anything, a tip or story for us this week?
Sure. I think my tip is probably a broader stroke. We at DeMartian, we think that email is broken, and that's how we operate every day, trying to help people, whether it's enterprise-sized businesses or SMB. And there's stats that show there's hundreds of billions of messages that are sent each day, with the largest majority of those being spam. And spam, while most people associate spam with simply being a nuisance, there can be messages that are spoofed that have very bad intent and sent by bad actors, and it's sent to businesses, and that's why we talk about BEC, or business email compromise. And DMARC can help you stop that and gives you visibility. So I hope we get to dive into that today.
Most definitely. Sounds good. All right. So, Mike, what do you have for us this week?
Well, with the stay safe at home or work from home environment, a lot of folks, especially techie folks, have been seeing this as an opportunity to do some at-home training. I dabbled with the LinkedIn Learning series of courses, and that's been pretty cool. They have a 30-day trial, and which also gives you a premium membership to LinkedIn, which is pretty interesting itself. But there's other services like IT Pro TV. They have a 7-day trial. I've dabbled with that. But here's a pro tip. Remember lynda.com? They were bought by LinkedIn Learning. And it's funny, I was on the show, I don't know, a couple years ago talking about library services, that if you pay your taxes and your county has public libraries, you may have access to additional services provided by the library. Sure enough, my library provides a free membership to lynda.com. Lynda.com in turn has been purchased by LinkedIn Learning, and LinkedIn supports that relationship. So essentially, even though I have the 30-day free trial, after the 30 days, it's actually a permanently free trial or permanently free service because of the relationship my library has with LinkedIn.com, which is now LinkedIn Learning. So that's something. And then it's funny because with LinkedIn, it's kind of funny. You do a 2-hour video and then it posts, and you can have it post to your profile, kind of like your resume, that you've done something cool. But the bigger payoff is that that gets me curious to go and buy maybe a book and dig deep. So anyway, that's my tip.
That is a great tip and a great way to learn at home for sure. You know, a lot of people nowadays, I would say, I wonder how many people out there actually do have library cards, because I know that's gone a little bit by the wayside. I know my family here does. I probably, to access some of the services at our local library, I probably needed to get a library card. And I've been thinking about it for the last, I don't know, 8-9 years since we've been over here, and still haven't done it. So it's probably a good tip to, get that library card so you have access to things like that, especially during times like this.
So what's funny about all that is I actually used to work for the city of Chicago's the Chicago Public Library for 5 years before I went to database management for 10, and only read 3 books while I was there. So I really regret it now, as I'm a big reader now on all that. And I was so excited that Mike had said that, like, there's a possibility that, the Chicago Public Library might have that, but unfortunately that is not one of the services that they have. But they do have the Reference USA that Mike mentioned way back when. So it's always good to look at those resources, because I always forget. And I'm always having to ask my sister, because she's still the head library clerk over at one of the branches there for the last probably now 15 years. So I always got to poke her to find out what my library card number is, because I just don't remember it anymore.
That's funny. The other thing too is sometimes you can get, usually most of the libraries do have, it's not Audible, but they do have a, basically an Audible type version of things that you can download to your smartphone now. They used to hand out little devices that they would, rent out to you, or that you would borrow from the library, because that's what you do, is borrow. And nowadays you can basically, there's probably 3 or 4 or 5 different services, and each library system will take one of those services, but you can usually download it on your phone and get Audible versions of, or audio versions, I should say, not Audible, audio versions of books on basically the old books on tape type thing. So definitely check that out. And again, all you really need is a library card. So apparently libraries are not going anywhere. All right, my tip today is, I don't know if it's a tip or just, maybe something if you're in the market. So I needed a new printer. I've been using an Epson Workforce Pro. I think it was a 4540 series or 4450 series. I don't remember. One of those two. Anyways, it's an inkjet printer, multifunction, has a scanner, flatbed scanner, has the feed-in scanner and all that kind of stuff. Worked fine, worked great. The problem with, and we use it periodically, pretty much all the time, but the problem with especially inkjets is that at some point or another, usually the ink will dry up in the head. And when that happens, your head costs more. It costs almost as much or more to replace the head than it does just to buy a new printer. So I was talking to our good friend, John Dubinsky, and he and his customer base apparently love Brother printers. Now, I had a Brother printer years ago. and it broke on me several times. And it's one of those things where when you have something break, you're just like, yeah, I don't like that particular company. Well, I listened to John and I went and looked up a Brother printer, and it was the Brother MFC L8900 CDW. And it is a color laser jet, not an inkjet. And I love this printer. It works really well. It sits there so silent until you go to print something, and then it will spool up. It prints what you need. And what's even cooler than that is, without adding anything to my smartphone, I was able to take an email or whatever it is I wanted to print, go to print, and it goes right to that printer and prints off what I needed to do. So it makes life a lot easier, instead of, back in the day when you couldn't get things to work, you would take a file or you would take a document or something like that, and you would email it to yourself so you could get it on your computer, and then you would print it from there. And it was such a monumental pain. But this printer actually, it does everything great. The only thing, I got this printer because it does actually, for the feed scanner, it will do both sides simultaneously. Not that I do it a whole lot, but it's just one of those things. It's nice if you got a two-sided document, you shove it in, it goes through, prints out your double-sided copy, and you're good to go. So anyways, I love the printer. It's like I said, it just works. And so I will be, unless something weird happens, I'll probably be sticking with Brother from here on out. And their software is good too. It's actually works. It's really light on a system. It doesn't take a bazillion years like HP printers do. It takes 4.5 hours to download a driver with all their other junk in it.
So it's funny you say that. I was just going to say, I replace every HP printer I find when I get a chance with a Brother, because I just always had great success. Even when John would highlight that all the time, I still have my L8850 CDW, which is a color monstrous color printer. I think it just now alerted me to replace the belt, and then just got to get that taken care of, and it's still going to keep on going. So
Laser, that's nice too.
Yeah,
it's fast, right?
It's fast, but it's very clean, and it's not something, if you were going to print out photos or something, you're probably not going to want to use that printer. But you can go online, or you could go to, I don't know, CVS, Walmart, whatever, and get, with a USB stick or something, and get photos printed out, or send it through, go online and send them the photos, and they can print them and then send them to you. So, I mean, really, if you really wanted a hard copy of a photo, either that, or you could just buy a cheap inkjet that would do that. But again, the problem is, if you don't use your inkjet all the time, one of the guarantees is your heads will clog up. That's just what happens with those inks, unfortunately. Even if you use the company's ink, I've had it happen on almost every different model I've had over the years. So, all right, let's go ahead and go into our main topic. Today, we're talking about DMARC, and obviously we have Rob here from DMARCian. And basically, I'm going to go ahead and start off, because I didn't know what DMARC actually stood for. So it's Domain-Based Message Authentication Reporting and Conformance. Now,
Wow, it's a mouthful.
I don't even know what all that means, but before we even get started into that, which I'm very interested in, because that intrigues me right there, Rob, I want you to go ahead and give us a background of yourself and where you came from and how you got to be where you're at now.
Sure, thanks, and thanks again for having me on the show. So I came from a world of email, going back to, gosh, I'm going to kind of date myself here, but at SunTrust Bank in 2002, I put some MTA servers in place. Many of you have heard of Ironport. And at that time, I had met a guy named Tim Dragan. He was our technical resource to help us get these in place, among other people at Ironport at the time. And years later, I crossed paths with Tim and find out he is at a company called DMARCian, and supports an open standard called DMARC. And so I look into it, and I read about DMARC, and I'm like, wait a minute, why in the heck wouldn't, one, I have heard of this, and then two, why doesn't everybody have DMARC? And the reality is that I think the awareness just isn't there. It's relatively speaking, it's a newer technology, and it's tough to adopt and embrace. It can be intimidating sometimes. So I think that's probably why we're seeing a slower growth curve. But in 2019, we saw a adoption rate of 300%, and that's, it's a DNS entry, so you can measure this. You can see who's got it and who doesn't, quite frankly. But it was really great to come full circle and meet Tim and talk to him about what he was doing. And then in that process, Tim had brought on board about 3 years ago a good friend of mine that I met at Good Technology back many years ago, and Ed Carroll, the general manager for DMARC Americas. And so talking to the two of them and just learning about DMARC, it was very exciting to join them, which I did late last year. And one in particular thing they've tasked me with is the Managed Service Provider Program, or the MSP program, to give and empower MSPs with the tools that we extend to mostly commercial customers, and take that part of the business and extend over to MSPs to serve the SMB community.
And I would say that's probably a good idea too, as far as getting the SMB community, just because there's probably, if you look at enterprise is huge, but it's on a smaller scale, versus there's a lot of small businesses out there, small, medium-sized businesses, that actually need things like this to protect themselves. Because, yes, it gets hit. People get hit on the enterprise level, but I work for Ford Motor Company, and they have everything pretty locked down nowadays. Now, back years ago, we did have somebody infect their system with a floppy disk. Yes, a floppy disk.
Wow. 3.25 inch floppy or 5.5?
It was I believe it was
floppy?
it was a 3.25.
Gotcha.
So yeah, not the older, huge one. But yeah, so that stuff, from that standpoint there on the enterprise level, there's a lot of things that they lock down, and you basically can do little to nothing on the enterprise level, even though I'm sure things do happen at certain companies. But from the small business to the medium-sized business out there, obviously a lot of people are using email a lot today. And it's just one of those things that I don't ever see it going away, because in my opinion, it's a great way to communicate. Even via, you can communicate on the phone, you can communicate, but to have a record of something that was sent, obviously not a paper record, but a digital record, is really, you can keep as much as you want. And it's another story for another day, because a lot of people keep way too much. I might need that one day. Okay, your email box should not be 50 gigs, but okay, whatever. It's just weird. But, people do that. So anyways, going back to DMARC, and can you give us a broad overview of what DMARC is and what it can do for us?
Sure. So DMARC relies heavily on two existing technologies, SPF and DKIM. So hopefully most of your listeners, perhaps are MSPs, they've put those in place for their customers. These are two really fundamental aspects of securing email. At the time when those were developed, 2003, 2005 timeframe, there was, they didn't think about the visibility as far as, well, I've put these technologies in place, these protections, but I don't actually have a way of seeing if they're working. Is someone in China sending 100,000 messages a day that are pretending to be from me? And is it failing SPF? And then, so aside from the visibility, DMARC also provides a way to really restrict your domain from being used. So if a mail doesn't meet a certain criteria, you can say, hey, mail handler in China or Germany or Russia, if that email is suspect, then I'm going to reject that messages from being sent. And mail handlers really like this, by the way, because it shows that you have the ability of protecting your domains, and they don't have to actually, move these email around and be liable for passing it around. And those are really the two main features of DMARC, as far as what it provides.
So from a standpoint of, it basically sounds like it will take things that it sees that are not normal for email, and it's not matching up to the criteria of what it's supposed to be, and saying, no, we're not going to. Now, so from that standpoint there, what does it actually do with emails of that type?
So you have a couple of different things you can instruct the mail handler to do. If you turn on DMARC, which is a DNS setting, generally speaking, most people put it in what we would call a policy of none, which is an observation state. It's certainly highly recommended that you start off in just observation, just kind of all of a sudden have this view of what's happening against your domains, including even your inactive domains. And after you are comfortable and you do some alignment and you identify your legitimate senders, you advance your policy to a restrictive state. There's a next step would be what we call quarantine as part of the DMARC specification. So you set your policy to quarantine. At that point, you're telling the mail handler to send that message essentially to a junk folder. We're all very familiar with junk folders. And you have the ability of basically saying, this message doesn't look right, please route it to the junk folder. After you're in a state where you're observing this activity and you're comfortable to where you're impacting this message, these messages that fit that criteria, you can advance your policy to a policy of reject. And that's, again, where you completely just not even, you tell the mail handler not even to send that message at all. And so P equals reject is certainly a state where you want any domain, whether active or inactive, to get to, but you have to do a lot of heavy lifting to make sure that you're there. You've got your legitimate senders that are sending on your behalf identified, and it's also a best practice, right, to have, for example, your marketing department decides to hire or bring on a new company that's going to send a lot of messages on your behalf. You want to align them and make sure they're meeting your standards before all of a sudden messages get batted away because they're not aligned with you. So that's a big part of it as well.
Well, it sounds like if you were to turn on reject right from the get-go, you would probably be missing a lot of email there without going through that process.
Yeah.
And it's probably easy to at least get an observation and see what's going on inside that domain with the email that's coming in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sure Mike and Paco can both comment, which, by the way, are both in our MSP program using DMARC's management portal. If you went to a reject state right out of the gate, it could be very impactful to legitimate mail flow, and sure, you might kill some spam in there as well. But email being as important as it is, you don't want to impact the legitimate mail. And so there's some work there to make sure you first have the visibility, and then you are aligning your legitimate senders.
Yeah, we had that issue where we flipped on reject by accident on a client where we just were so prone to setting it up because it's just that easy to do it in DMARC to kind of create the copy in what you need for the information. And I got a call probably like in an hour or two, it was about an hour or two later on. They were like, yeah, we're getting a ton of bounce backs. Did anything happen? I was like, oh, let me take a look and see what happened. Because that's the only thing I changed on their thing. So it's sure enough, I put it to reject instead of quarantine at the time, just to kind of figure out what's going to spam and what's not. So powerful, but yet very simple to do.
And something about to understand for our listeners that may not be experienced with DMARC. DMARC is an authentication standard that does work off of SPF and DKIM, but it allows for the capability of reporting when you populate your public DNS records with a text record for your DMARC. You include email addresses where you want reports to be sent to. And there's two styles of reports, and I don't know if at the moment that's really too important. But if you specify, say, you're an MSP and you specify yourself as the recipient of where these reports should go to, you receive it in an XML format that's not human friendly. And you get a report about every day from every mail server that had messaging going through on behalf of the domain, your domain. So my point is that you really need to get these messages through a reporting software, and this is where Demartian fits in. With a service like Demartian, the email addresses you use is going to be a Demartian email address that they assign to you. They collect these daily reports and they parse them out for you, and they make them and they store them, so you have a history of them, and it's no manual effort on your behalf to manage these.
Mike, you're speaking my
Well said.
language. No manual effort to manage these. I like that. That's what we all like, right? The automation. So, all right. So let's go into, obviously, that's kind of we've got a big overview of what DMARC is and what it can do for email. What are the steps that people need to take to get started with something like this and get their basically their email domains protected?
Sure. So the program we have set up, the MSP program for Demartian, is made specifically for MSPs, where the intent is that if you're an MSP and you manage DNS and mail and things like that on behalf of your customer, then this is the right program, because you're going to set a DNS entry. You'll enter that visible mode where you're not impacting their mail flow. But then you'll have this view of everything that's happening against your customers' domains. Some of your customers might send very little amount of messages each day, each month, and others might be a little more dependent on outbound messages, like perhaps someone that's sending a newsletter, someone that's in retail or e-commerce, or maybe a restaurant sending out things to their customer base. So you want to watch that, and you establish to Mike's point, you enter a DNS text record that flips the switch. These XML reports start coming into Demartian. We translate through something that, again, is not in human consumable form, because it's a bunch of XML lines and code, and we present that in a very graphical format, so you can start seeing, okay, these messages are originating in these different areas. They're being sent by these people, and once you get through that stage of seeing it, then you can actually start tweaking the dials and narrowing in on the legitimate senders and filtering out the bad ones, quite frankly.
And Mike, let me ask you, because you were the one that first brought us the whole DMARC situation and made us aware of what was going on out there, and that was quite a while ago. Now, what actually made you look into something like this? Was it a problem that you were seeing, or is it just something that you were intrigued on and go, oh wait? Because I'm just wondering, was there things going on that you knew about, or was there things going on that you didn't know about? Because obviously there was things going on.
Right. Yeah. This is about a year and a half ago, and it was. Spoofing has been a problem for a while, but I don't know what it was about a year and a half ago. I got a number of clients that were losing their minds because they were. Staff members were receiving emails from their own coworkers, and it was clearly spam. How could this be going on? And I'm my business. I'm a technician and I'm the owner. So I was very interested, as both a business owner and a technician, to figure out how I can serve the needs of clients that may have very different email systems and email clients. First of all, I didn't want to jump to an email gateway solution that's to be a pro at Mimecast or Proofpoint or Microsoft ATP. In doing some research about spoofing and how to prevent it, I came across these email authentication methods that are all about domain-to-domain email traffic that's agnostic to all of those things. And the technician part of me was thrilled to be able to get a solution that would apply to a variety of clients, and similarly, the business owner part of me liked that equally as well. So that's why I started down my DMARC, being a practitioner of DMARC, and this was like, say, a year and a half ago or so. and I followed the YouTube videos of the GCA, Global Cyber Alliance, which has a lot of great content. I signed up with Demartian's trial and a number of other trials, and to learn about how I can offer these services. So yeah, it was from the technician perspective and the business owner perspective to find a solution that would be applicable across many different platforms. And by the way, it's not a replacement for email gateways. Excuse me. It complements the email gateway service, the spam filters, the other services email gateways provide, complements it with this domain-based authentication.
That's a really great point. Yeah, we don't come in asking any customer to replace anything they have as far as at the gateway. And the key is very early talking about a layered strategy, and DMARC fits into that layered strategy of messages that are generated in many other places in the world that are destined for email addresses of your customers, the yahoo.com, the gmail.com, those messages. And so having the ability of having a view and having the ability to actually affect those messages are key. Again, part of a layered strategy. Thanks, Mike. I
like that. Yeah, you can never have too many things in place that are going to protect you, because you're getting attacked from all sides, and it's hard to see exactly how you can protect yourself unless you do have a layered approach. So yeah, that's good. Paco, what kind of, now obviously you had heard about DMARC through Mike and stuff like that. What kind of pushed you towards using Demartian, and what were you seeing out there that you needed to correct from your client base?
So the biggest thing that we were running into was clients' emails going to spam. And also happened to be on my own domain as well. So there was a way it was something for us to try and figure out why and how do we fix that. And, talking to Mike way back when, and just trying to understand, the standards of SPF, DKIM, and DMARC, a lot of people, we know to enter these DNS records, but we don't understand what they usually are most of the times, right? We know that it's needed. We know it needs to put in there. So, for example, for Syncro to start sending emails out on my behalf, I need to make sure I put their IP address in my SPF record. DKIM is signed by whoever your email provider is, which I have a funny story on how Demartian saved my bacon, because things were going all over the place when I switched from G Suite to Office 365. And a lot of these things are, out of sight. You don't remember, you can't track it. And then you just need something that you can have a go-to. So talking to Mike talked really highly about Demartian, signed up for an account, and then realized how interesting it is with the dashboard that they give you. They lay out your domain, and they also give you a threat level. And we all love our colors. So they have our, green, red, and yellow. And then you can actually dive into what's being flagged as a threat. Is it valid, or do you need to actually fix or change something? But the most important part about it too is, even before you even sign up, they have an inspector tool that can tell you, hey, do you have all your ducks in a row? Do you have your SPF on? Do you have your DKIM on? Do you have DMARC on? And that's really where everyone should kind of start, right? And figuring out that type of situation. Get the first two fixed, and then get into DMARC and whatnot. But the dashboard actually allows you, once you enter your domain, you can refresh to once you've made a change to see if it's active and in what status. So we did this. We were at probably about 85% all good on our active domain. And then I think the other 15 was a threat unknown, which there were other countries forwarding somehow in some way. There was percent that was forwarded. So once we kind of done all this and we put the DMARC and understanding the statuses like we talked about, none, which is an alert only, quarantine, making sure it goes to spam, or reject, making sure nothing goes through. Over time, and that's what a lot of us have to understand, is that this is a timed approach. You have to make sure that this is a learning capability. And once you put these things in place, the things start to get better. As I adjust for my client who had all their emails going to spam, turns out that they had a marketing software, and I forgot which one it is. It's something like MailChimp. I just can't remember what the name of it was. But they didn't put the IP address in the SPF, and they didn't have a DMARC. Nothing was being signed under DKIM. So we were able to find that really easily through DMARC, through the Martian. And once we put that all through, we come to realize that the domain was blacklisted. And one of the email, I guess, I don't know, what do you call them, Mike? The main guys that kind of block a domain, or Rob, maybe you can help me out. You know what I'm talking about? Like SWORDs and all that.
Oh, yeah, there's like hundreds of them.
Yeah. So essentially it showed me one of them that was getting blocked, that probably was a big heavy hitter. Went through, submitted them to get removed. Once we got all of that cleaned up, I'd say probably in a maybe week and a half, maybe even 2, things were going smoothly now. Because now, as like what Rob mentioned, you've told the mail handler, we fixed it. Everything's looking good now. And, it takes some time for it to kind of figure it all out. But once you kind of get it going, it just ends up working for itself. And now you have the reporting and the dashboards to kind of review it as you move forward. It just makes things a lot easier.
So, Rob, in setting this up, what would be a time frame that somebody could be looking at to? And obviously, you probably, I would imagine you would recommend you change everything now, but kind of a step-by-step approach to get yourself going. How long would that normally take in that situation?
Tough to say. It's always going to depend on your customer and how active they are with outbound, as well as how many services they use to send messages on their behalf. And that's going to vary greatly. We've worked with customers that are sending 250 million messages a month that use one service provider, which is fantastic. They consolidate their services to one. But then we have others that might send 100,000 messages a month, and they just kind of work in different silos of their company, and they have 5 or 6 different legitimate senders. Salesforce, AWS, SendGrid, Paco mentioned MailChimp. These are all household terms to a lot of these MSPs, and you'll find that customers use many of these services. The aha moment that you turn on even to P equals none, the visibility state of DMARC, and you all of a sudden see who they all are. So you can go to your customer and say, look, you have all these guys sending messages on your behalf. One, you want to consolidate, make it more simple, or do you want to attack it as aligning via SPF, as Paco mentioned, getting the IPs in there? And then one thing I wanted to point out was, even when you get to that P equals reject state, it's not a finish line, so to speak. It's certainly a great state to be in, because you're rejecting messages that are spoofed, no matter where they originate in the world. But it's a practice. So once you are at reject, you want to get the automated reports. You want to set up alerts so that if something is awry, maybe there's a high level of threat, you want to be aware of it, or maybe there's a new legitimate sender that's been set up and they're getting rejected. You have to have that visibility and get it set up. If you don't have the account and have everything set up and have that visibility, it can take 3 or 4 days, right, to get an account set up, to get DNS replicated, to get mail handlers to send the XML reports, to go through it and translate it. And when your customer is, they're impacted, there's a problem, you want that portal in place so that you can immediately look and see what's going on, have that view.
Okay. That's good. Yeah. I was just wondering, as far as on the time frame, what it would take somebody, what kind of scenario would they be looking at? So that definitely answers that question.
So Jeff, it's been my experience as an MSP, learning about DMARC, you really get your chops good at populating clients' public DNS records and what the different records mean. So that's really good for a technician. Now, but as far as the timeline goes, if it when you in populating this information, a lot of this information is going to come from the email providers themselves, and it'll come from the whether it's the bulk email provider or the CRM or your MailChimp email marketing. So a lot of the information will be provided for you, and the better larger email companies will support DKIM and DMARC, making that easier for you. And yeah, it might just take a day or so. Now, as far as once it's set up, yes, setting the policy to none is good. I found as an MSP, I set it to none with reporting through Demartian for 30 days. Because my clients, they may send up to 2,000 emails a day, maybe. This is not millions here. But what I found is that if you go through a 30-day cycle, you're going to get the cycle of invoices, you're going to get the cycle of the CEO messages, you're going to get the cycle of kind of those one-offs. They tend to 30 days is good for MSPs that service, say, users, businesses that have, say, 5 to 25 staff. That's my observation. Then after the 30-day period, you have that all those records in Demartian. You can, as those 30 days progress, you incorporate whatever seems to be missing. When it comes to includes in the SPF, and after 30 days, that's when I transition to a reject policy, and I've been very successful with going through step by step in that fashion.
Paco, what has been your experience as far as setting up your customer base and the timeline of getting everything going and getting to that point where you're protecting the customer?
I definitely don't do 30 days like Mike does, which is probably a better idea just to make sure you get a full snapshot. I've actually based it on 2 weeks is kind of what I've done with the reporting. Usually 2 weeks, depending on when it's being onboarded. If it's in the middle of the month or in the beginning is usually a good time. And the reporting is really what makes it easy to understand, are you in a bad spot? Are you not? But I usually stick with it in a quarantine for a little bit, just because exactly like how Mike mentioned, there are those onesie twosies that kind of come through, and then you have to understand what needs to kind of be made and done as you're doing, especially if you're doing a migration. It gives an opportunity for you to understand kind of what was set up in previous DNSs, what you want to set up in the clean new DNS if you're moving domains, companies, if you're moving email providers, things of that nature. Usually about 2 weeks is kind of what I stand it for. And then for a full reject, it's usually probably about a couple of weeks after that. But usually it's none to reject is about 2 weeks. And then we kind of just keep an eye on it from after that.
And Rob, from your standpoint or from Demartian's standpoint, what would you say is the average of people kind of just checking it out as far as putting it in the observation mode to going to that full reject?
I would say on average 2 to 3 months. I'm probably leaning toward Mike on being a little more cautious on observation, right, and seeing what's happening. Many times customers operate in peaks and valleys, so you'll see very small volumes of messages, and all of a sudden there's a busy part of the month, or maybe they decided to send out a blast email, and if that window that you're going from none or to quarantine or none to reject, you might not catch, that so-and-so decided to send a message to a couple thousand people. So the observation mode's key. I mean, the reality is if you've been, going this long without DMARC, then get it in place and observe. We definitely like to see from none to quarantine and then ultimately to reject. There's even phases of quarantine where you can set it to, say, 25, only impact 25% of the messages, and then change that perhaps to 50 or 75, and just very, tiptoe, be careful, and don't impact valid mail flow. But to answer your question, I think 2 or 3 months is really safe for a lot of the small business community out there.
And that's good, because I think there's a lot of people out there that they're scared of putting something in place that could impact their customers
Sure.
from a standpoint of stopping email altogether. So there's got to be a process. And Rob, I'm with you. It's been sitting there for so long with nothing looking at it and them not understanding what's going on in the background. Anyways, what's a few more months to make sure we can get the process in place and get it where it doesn't impact them or impacts them very little?
Right. And many times, MSPs come to us because their customer is having an issue with the spam. So they research what's happening, they find out about DMARC, so they set up an account, and it's very reactive. We certainly do have MSPs that come to us. They want to be more proactive. It's let's bolden our story around security. Let's differentiate because it can be a very competitive market, and let's be able to tell our customers that we're able to stop mail from originating in other places. So it's just it really depends on what you're trying to achieve on on behalf of your customer and how they're being impacted. But to your point, if it's been going that long without it, then cautious is better.
And it's probably one of these situations because you made a comment before the show that obviously none of my domains are protected.
Bad.
And so yes, that's my fault. I haven't done any of those things yet, and it's one of those things again. Time being of the essence. Yeah, I'd love to do.
I know a couple of MSPs that use DMARC and extend it to their customers if you want.
There you go. Got a couple right here. All right.
Right.
So, but yeah, so from that standpoint, when you're looking at, obviously setting up DMARC and putting all this stuff together, and we've got kind of a timeline, it's probably a good thing for people to get started on their own domains that they're using for their business anyways, and kind of get a feel for it and see what's going on. Because in my opinion, with most things, it's a safe way to do something. Yes, you can impact your business a little bit, but generally you have several different ways where people are getting a hold of you anyways. So email's one of them. Obviously it's probably a safe way to go. Then once you know the insides and outs of it, which probably wouldn't take that, from what I'm understanding, wouldn't take that long to figure out, then you can start passing that on and putting it in your client base so that they can be protected also. So probably starting sooner than later is a better deal. So I'll get on that.
Yeah, practice on your own domains. The way we have the program structured is that you could have up to 10 domains that you're observing, and that would be at no charge. So you can sign up today, go to dmarcian.com. That's dmarcian.com. And we've got tools on there so you can start looking at your customers' domain names to see if they have DMARC already set up for some reason. But in the upper right, you'll see, try it free. You create the account, start pointing your DNS to our email address, and you'll start seeing that, having that visibility. But I definitely agree with you. It's always great to practice on your own domains. I think that Paco, you had mentioned the Global Cyber Alliance. So the Global Cyber GCA is a great resource. They're actually in the middle of their second DMARC bootcamp, completely free, a bootcamp on how to observe email, how you rely on SPF and DKIM, how you get to restrictive policies. And so if you have the resources and you want to have that ability of offering DMARC, it's a great resource.
And I'll tell you what, first 10 domains for, observation mode for free. I mean, you can't beat that because, hey, put it out there and see what's going on and then figure out what you need to do from there. So I love that. Let's go ahead and take a real quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about any lasting thoughts, anything that we haven't covered as far as DMARC goes, Rob, and then we'll get any lasting thoughts from the other two gentlemen. But if you would like to be a guest on this show, just email me, jeff@mspunplugged.com, and hopefully we'll have the DMARC in place by then. And I will send you the details. There's a way to sign up. I'll give you all the details of when we're on and all that kind of stuff. And I'll send you a link for where you can sign up at. A lot of people have that information already, but I figured that was something we haven't asked for in a while. And Paco brought it up to me the other day. And I said, yeah, we probably need to put that out on the show. This show is for the people. Obviously, we have a lot of vendors, which we love because we get a lot of good information from the vendors, but it's also for the people like Paco, myself, Mike, and others that have been on the show out there. So if you'd like to be a guest on this show, we're one of those shows that actually opens it up to the IT business owners out there that want to talk about their business, the ins and outs and things they go through on a daily basis, or, whatever topic we come up with for the week. Anyways, email me, jeff@mspunplug.com, and we will get you that information. All right. So, Rob, is there anything that we haven't covered as far as what Demartian can do for the people out there to protect their clients' emails?
No, I think we've really covered it. I think that we kind of are taking this disruptor type of stance where we feel like everyone needs DMARC. The email is broken kind of approach. And so we want DMARC spread far and wide, but we also realize that we need MSPs. We need to work with them to be able to get DMARC out there. Many of the SMB community, they don't know what DMARC is, and they probably never will know what DMARC is, just because it can be a little intimidating. So they're going to rely on their MSP to provide them with the greatest security tools that are available. And so what we did was we took a very refined and perfected portal that we are very proud of as far as translating XML and presenting it in a very actionable way. And we extended that to MSPs, but we don't make it so that they're breaking the bank. And we feel by doing that and by leveraging the MSPs, we will get DMARC out there wider. So
that's good, because definitely needed.
Yeah,
definitely needed. Emails, like I said in the beginning of the show, email's not going anywhere, and we need to figure out how to better protect ourselves for the long haul, because it's something that companies are going to use to communicate for a very long time. Unless maybe VR, I don't know, but probably not. That would be weird. All right, so
what would your avatar be? Han Solo or?
Yeah, probably Han Solo, Indiana Jones, anything Harrison Ford.
There you go. Striking resemblance.
It's funny because I remember, and this is going to go back a little bit. It's just a short little story. Back in the late 70s, we had a VHS videotape player. For those that don't know, it was actually a big cassette, like yay big. For those people that can't see on the podcast, but it was pretty good size. Google it, VHS. And we had a copy of, oh my gosh, and Mike is actually showing one. I don't even think I do have a box downstairs. But yeah. So we had a copy of Star Wars. And I cannot, I don't know if I can say, but it wasn't a legitimate copy. It was probably from the movie theater. And this was years and years ago. Anyways, we probably watched that tape, I don't know, 50 some odd times. I love the Star Wars movie. And one of the movies that came out shortly after that was Indiana Jones. And, again, classic movie. We watched a whole bunch of that growing up. So, yeah, I do like my Harrison Ford.
So what's funny is that my favorite movie of all time is a Harrison Ford movie, but probably one you probably won't know or may not come front to mind.
And that would be
Air Force One.
I loved Air Force One. Great movie. I got it. I actually have it on DVD.
I also have it as DVD as well.
What's DVD? I'm sorry.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny. I still have a DVD collection. I have a Blu-ray collection, and I was telling my dad the other day. I said, I really watch most of my stuff streaming either to my tablet or my computer screen, and I could go downstairs. I could stream it there. I could go in my bedroom. I could stream it, and I just don't. It's so weird. We're in a different day and age. Yeah. Anyways, we go down that rabbit hole. But so from that standpoint, Paco, what things do you, what lasting thoughts do you have about Demartian and, what you're using it for in the future?
So a couple things. One, I think we should change the name of this episode from anti-spoofing email to email is broken, because I love that phrase that Rob has said. Two, if you wanted to hear more about the cyber, what is it?
Global Cyber
Global Alliance. You could check out episode 322 of the Computer Repair Podcast, because we had them on then, and that's when we talked a little bit more on DMARC for the first time with Mike. As far as for Demartian, I mean, there's no other better way to either A, try it out, or B, reach out to Rob and his team to really get the demo, really understand it, take advantage of the MSP program. I mean, you can't get better than 10 free domains to monitor. I mean, Jeff has mentioned this quite a bit of times in the past. There's nothing better than a company that does a tiered system, because they understand growth and scalability. That means that they're trying to be a partner first before trying to collect your bottom dollar. And then as you grow, in reverse, support them. So I really just would mention to just try them out, even if you just don't know if you need it. If you do need it, try it out, give it a whirl.
Yeah, learn something new, which would be good. I mean, it's always good to learn something new and make yourself more well-rounded out there. Mike, what are your lasting thoughts on Demartian and DMARC and all that?
Sure, I have a parting story. Now, for those listening to this, maybe down the road, it is today's date is May 17th, 2020, and we're just shortly after a period where small businesses are signing up for EIDL and PPP and this kind of thing for funding. One of my clients has been my client for a while, has been set up with DMARC, and I have them with Demartian monitoring their email flow. And this business works closely. They get paid by the town council. They work closely with the local chamber, and they are all about businesses in this county. They once information had been trickling out about EIDL and PPP, this organization took it upon themselves to really educate the local businesses, and they got mailing lists from everyone. They were sending out their outbound email went from maybe 25, 50 a day to 2,000 a day. And this is a kind of email where it's like a single email that gets sent to 2,000 recipients. Overnight, they were pumping out all this information for the local businesses, and I have to say, to date, they have not been on one email blacklist yet. The Demartian reports a sea of green, meaning what I mean by that is nothing's been rejected. To the best of my knowledge, all these emails are landing in the recipient's inbox, and this has to do with the email authentications that are in place. Now, part two of this story, in the middle of all this, I get a report from Demartian that on one day that none of the emails are going through. So I call them, and I learn that they have their website developer came across a better deal for their hosted domain and had them transfer their website to a different hosted domain. And two of the biggest enemies to your public DNS records are going to be that hosting provider themselves and website developers. I'm sorry for calling that out, but it's true. And
it's damn true. I'm not even going to say true. It's damn true. Website developers, man, I mean, for those that are quasi and hybrids, I get it, but damn, that's all I have to say about that.
Yes. So this is a case where everything was running very, very smoothly. And just to give an example of why it's great to have this monitoring in place, even though you have been, being on a reject policy is ancient history. And that is to quickly identify what the heck's gone on and then go in there and resolve it. And within a day, again, a sea of green, and they're back to that. Now, the thing is, though, is that they can't sustain this. I mean, they're and they don't plan on it. It's, the middle end of May, they don't need these emails so much anymore, and they're going to dial it back and stuff. It makes sense for them to be on a bulk email service purpose, but the fact that they could just take it to 10 and not have problems speaks to the power of DMARC.
That's awesome. All right, Rob, if people wanted to find out more about you and where they could get information about Demartion, where would they go?
We set up a website, Demartion.com, DMARC being the standard, IAN.com. And you'll find there's a lot of really cool tools. If you want to venture in there and look at some of your customers, see if they're set up. You can see if they have SPF, DKIM in place, obviously DMARC as well. The sign up free icons in the upper right, if you want to enter into a trial, you could be up and running in a couple of days with DMARC data in your portal. If the listeners could do me a favor and choose Enterprise, the three choices are Basic, Plus, and Enterprise. Choose Enterprise because that's equivalent to all the features that we're giving you guys: unlimited user admins, unlimited domain groups to separate out customer data, the 2 years of data history. All those things are part of that Enterprise program. And you'll hear very quickly from us when you sign up for a trial. One of our guys will reach out and say, how can I help? What's your story? And be sure to let them know, hey, we're an MSP. We heard about you. We want to get on board. Our approach is to empower you because generally speaking, folks are new to DMARC. So we encourage you to get data in there. We meet with you and go through the data you've collected for your customers. When you sign on to the program officially, we have an onboarding. We can record that for you. We encourage you to have several of the people on your team attend so they can ask questions and learn. And so it's really taken off and it's exciting. The approach is, like I said, it's very, very different, very new. And we're learning a lot from our MSPs, and I think they're learning a lot from us. So it's been a great partnership.
That is awesome, and we will definitely have all those links in the show notes for everyone to do that. And yeah, go out there and try it. I mean, that's you can't beat it, especially for free.
That's right.
All right, and Mike, I want to thank you also for coming out. And what if people wanted to find out more about you or what you're up to, where would they go?
Sure. I just want to put this out there. If you are an MSP and have general questions about implementing DMARC, or if you'd like to hire me for a DMARC project, please reach out and let's continue the conversation. Check out the show notes for my website and email, and follow me on Twitter at @MikeWise, as well as Facebook and LinkedIn.
Awesome. And Mr. Paco Lebron, where could people find out more about you?
Well, unfortunately, this is my last episode. Nah, I'm kidding. You can find me on this great fine programming every Sunday evening at 7:30. Eastern Daylight Savings Time. I always get confused because I'm in Central, so I have to keep saying Eastern. And just a note on TechCon Unplugged, I had sent out an email on behalf of me and Jeff this past Friday. It is a survey to kind of gauge the audience's interest / kind of how you feel about those that have purchased tickets or thinking about purchasing tickets, about coming to the event. As I mentioned last week, that this email will be going out. Quite a lot of you have already responded. I appreciate it. Again, we're waiting to hear responses up until July 4th till we can figure out how we are going to go about the TechCon Unplugged event scheduled for September 25th to the 27th. So if you have a chance, should only be 2 minutes of your life that you'll have to just fill out 4 questions, and we would greatly appreciate it.
Very well said. And thank you for putting that together too, Paco. And yeah, I would just say this, that I hope that everybody that gets it will take the 2 minutes to fill it out, because obviously the more information we have, the better. And we kind of want to see where everybody's at. All right, come join us live every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as Paco has already said, or I'm sorry, Eastern Daylight Savings Time. I don't know. It's so confusing. Anyways, 7:30 p.m. somewhere in the world. Check it out. You can watch live and hang out in the chat room over on youtube.com/MSP Unplugged. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel and your favorite podcasting app to never miss an episode. Do both. It helps. And we want to thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time on MSP Unplugged.
See you guys.